If I could have a motion to open the meeting at 1:03
So moved.
and a second,
Second.
and all in favor, thank you.
Aye.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm a bit disorganized myself. Because I forgot to print out the agenda. Okay, I'll go dig it up. All right, so we have minutes from September 10th and October 16. And we, I think I was all set with those. Does anybody else have comments?
They're perfect.
No.
They're great, of course.
Yep.
Thank you, Hester.
Good, yay. Ooh.
So can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. And then the treasurer's report, I just wanted to say out loud, since the meeting is recorded, I wanted to just look at Catherine's notes that she sent. Wow, I am just so disorganized today.
Well, she identified the donors for.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. And property tax, so that we have those names.
Okay, and yeah, because I was yep. Well, I didn't have any comments on the treasurer's reports either. Any questions either? Anyone else?
No,
Nope.
All right, then we can move to approve that as well.
Do we need to vote on that or no?
Yes, I think we do all the time.
So,
No, no, you're right, we don't. It's just an
Okay.
update. Okay.
okay,
So the first thing on our agenda was the CMLP funds. Catherine's not here. I'll just try and summarize. There's new management at CMLP, and there was a question about whether the funds going from CMLP to the town was allowed. And Catherine was going to follow up with Shannon because we've never had that question before. So I don't know if you have anything you can add, Shannon, or whether she reached out to you on this.
She has not. What I can say is that the new director of the light plan, Jason, he reached out to me about us trying to connect, which I presume is about this, but we haven't been able to yet.
Hey Shannon, it's Wendy.
Yep.
Yes. go ahead,
So
Wendy,
having
your
been,
hand.
hi, all of you, I raised my hand. Having been on the light board in the past, each year when they put their budget together, they do reserve funds for this purpose. And I just want to comment that they are reviewing their calendar year 25 budget next month. So there should be funds available now, and then they'll be voting next year's funds available next month as well. So
Thank you, Wendy. Every year when we've asked the CMLP, it's been about $10,000, and it's just
Yes.
it's sort of a formality, like it just happens. So this year, again, I don't see I don't know the exact wording from Catherine's, what she got for feedback, but it had something to do with the transfer of funds from one account to the other, and
Yeah.
whether that was legal. And
had
they
to
were gonna
do, I
check
think, with the legality somehow.
Correct.
of-
Yes, and so they were gonna check with town council, and I said, you know,
Yeah.
reach out to Shannon
Yeah.
first. So hopefully that'll just all clear up. I do have a concern just because the fund is getting low. I think we have. Yeah, I think we currently have like $780 left in it. So
But
I think it may mean that we use Hugh Cargill funds for CMLP requests. We'll see. But I'm sure it'll all get resolved. It's just a matter of communication.
Yeah, and I was just gonna comment, they run on a calendar year, so new funds would be available starting January, but again, Shannon can follow up on all that due diligence.
Okay, thank you. So
I
we're
just
gonna-
have a question about that. Historically, did CMLP ever administer these funds directly? Or are they assuming that by our review that we're just vetting it in the bigger picture of need?
Mhm.
That's it.
My understanding historically is that they're looking to you to manage that. They just allocate it annually.
Okay.
I don't know if it was ever done directly.
Mhm. Okay, just curious.
No, it's a good question.
Mhm.
All
We
right.
If
Go
I
ahead,
may,
Lucy.
as the intake person, we do have a little sway with CMLP because right up until the minute of our meetings, I often hear from people who are going to have their electricity turned off. So I appeal to Donna DeGray, who now is in charge of that, if she will please extend, the utilities until we've made a decision. And she's very good about that. So that happens several times a month. And
Mhm.
they're very understanding, and they will work out payment plans and all kinds of things that we say, you should do this, and so they work together. It's going very well, so that's what I would say.
They also have a moratorium in the winter. They don't shut off anyone's power. So I think it's like November to March or something, and then they start the collections process up again.
I'm sure it will all work out.
Good.
Yeah. So I noticed, so we were gonna review and update job descriptions, the Hugh Cargill Trust Committee calendar and the annual appeal letter. If it's okay with everybody, I'd really love to start with the annual appeal letter because I'm very late in getting it drafted. And if we could look at it, approve it, then we can start the process of printing and mailing. Is
Okay.
that all right with everyone?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I just took last year's letter, basically, and made a few tweaks. I took out that we now administer the property tax relief fund because it used to be separate. Last year it was together. This is the second year, so I didn't think we needed to
Yeah.
mention anymore that we do that. But this is basically the letter we've used in the past. And we do, at some point, we write down the number of requests that we were able to fulfill. And we also, usually Lucy gives us a couple of thank you notes or something that we can put in there so people understand the impact that the committees, that the trust has on our residents. Did anybody have specific comments about the wording? Because I'm completely open to any, changes or, we don't have to use the same letter every year.
So I would start by saying, as we did last year, capitalize dear friends and citizens.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, you're right, Lucy. Thank you.
We made that correction last year.
We did.
I do have some samples of thank yous, but I don't have them this minute.
That's
So
okay. If you could email them to me,
I will do that.
yeah,
Okay.
two or three, just brief, here's why it matters what we do kind of notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perhaps the thank you notes, which will be included, will cover this, but if they don't, I'm wondering about adding a sentence in the second paragraph after greater needs for assistance period that says something about the range of needs that we address. We are able to help people with blah, 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 blah.
So Hester, I actually was considering that. And I ended up leaving it out because the Hugh Cargill Trust Committee administers a lot more funds than the annual appeal asks for money for. So for example, CMLP funds and the, what's the other one? The summer camperships. Actually, they do all go into the same fund though, except for CMLP.
I mean, but so it could say as an example, we're able to help with, electricity bills, summer camperships,
Rent and
Dental bills,
medical
whatever.
bills, many.
Car
And
repair.
scholarships, we give scholarship matching money. So
I think that's really useful to give those illustrations. It might spur people on. I also wonder whether it's time we move on from saying the lasting impacts of COVID. We're 3 years
Mm.
out.
Yeah,
good.
okay. So, all right. So I'm going to add scholarships, rent, car repairs, vision and hearing expenses.
Medical,
Driver's ed?
I
pardon?
love that one.
Which
Driver's
one?
ed?
Oh,
Driver's ed?
ed. Yep, driver's ed, medical, dental. Dental's huge, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I was thinking about dental and vision,
Car
Um,
repairs.
car
Yeah.
repairs I've got. Okay, so I'll reword the second paragraph to take out the mention of COVID and to add some examples of things that we have
Yeah.
supported from our applications. So this says last year we were able to fulfill X number of requests. I don't remember how we came up with the number last year because this letter goes out before the end of the year, so we don't actually have a total year's number. But I
But
don't
Well,
have,
you
do
could
it,
say
I
more
can do it
than.
in December last year or November last year. I can go
thank
back.
you.
That would be a way of doing it.
So I'll do in the last year.
Yeah,
Okay, that'd be great, Lucy.
yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah, we usually send this out in November and it's going to be late this year because it won't be ready by then. And every other year it goes to prior donors or the whole town. This year is a whole town mailing. So I actually wanted to ask Shannon about how that's done because I don't think it's appropriate or even possible for the committee to stuff that many envelopes.
Yeah, that's good to know because I haven't been here when you guys have ever done a full town-wide mailing.
Mhm.
I presume we go through Concord Printing. Concord Printing does town-wide mailings, for us for different things all the time. I don't know if you guys received the postcard about the town meeting study committee survey, like that's something that Concord Printing did.
Yeah.
So I know they can do it and I know they have plenty of templates for the town, so I can reach out to them.
Yeah, we do have Concord Printing print every year. But in the year we only sent to donors, the committee members take big stacks of letters and envelopes and does it ourselves, stamps and stuffs. And this is doing the whole town would be too much. That was the piece I was
Yeah,
actually
Concord Printing
wondering.
will do it.
Sorry?
Concord Printing will do it.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay.
That's what I mean, like they print, they print the envelopes. And they send it, I don't even see it.
I love
So-
it.
So is there a way for the return address up in the upper left-hand corner on the envelope? What could we put there? So people don't just put it in the trash because they say, oh, I'm not interested. But can we say print Hugh Cargill Trust? And then Town of Concord,
I don't see why we couldn't, typically when they mail things out for us, like, I don't know, I'm thinking about the postcard, it was just a postcard, it wasn't something that was in an envelope, but I don't see why they wouldn't be able to put Hugh Cargill Trust Committee in the town of Concord on the return address.
yeah, I think that would be a nice thing to do. Do you agree, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So Shannon, you know what? I'll just, when I've got the letter done, I'll just set up a time to get together with you and make sure we have all these Ts crossed and Is dotted before we send it to Concord Printing.
That sounds great.
Okay.
And do you all know, like, do you pay for this from your selectmen's account? How was this paid for previously?
Well, when it was the Property Tax Relief Committee, It was pretty informal. I feel like Denny paid for a lot of things herself, and, members often contributed stamps and things like that. I haven't been part of the whole town mailing either, so I guess, yeah.
So I
Um,
would say it's probably gonna come from the selectmen's account.
I think so.
Um, but I will be sure to get, an estimate from Concord Printing before we do that.
Okay, thank you. Um, Speaking just for myself, but maybe other members, I wouldn't be opposed to the fund contributing some part of it, but I don't think it would make sense for it to pay the whole thing. Doesn't seem like the right use of the funds.
I agree.
I agree. It's also kind of a public relations thing for us, getting the word out. So if they get an
Yes.
envelope that says Hugh Cargill Trust, oh, I've heard of that, so it's good publicity. So I'm not opposed to it, some of it coming out of our own account.
Okay. All right, so let's go back up. So we're gonna review and update the job descriptions, and if I remember correctly, we've done them all except intake, and Lucy, you sent us an updated one just before the meeting, yeah?
Just very slight adjustments.
I
Okay.
just appreciate the refresh. I do have my notes, but.
Yeah.
um, and
So, it's sort of the bare bones of what happens is on that piece of paper. But it's, it's a lot. It's a lot. And this month was many more applicants. And each applicant, it takes time working with them. So I know the goal is to make it simple, but there really isn't a way to make it simple unless someone has a good idea. I don't know how you do it.
So Lucy, I have a question. How many of those, what percentage overall come from referrals from the COA or from Bonnie Wilbur Community Services? How many are not coming already vetted through those resources?
There are maybe half.
Mhm.
We get people through the city of Boston, Section 8 housing.
Mhm.
I always say, who referred you to us? And it's very often Bonnie or COA, but sometimes it's a church or it's, a landlord or whatever. So
my concern is that, in that first sentence, it says an extensive interview. I think as volunteers, that's not something that most of us are signing up for or are skilled in. And I feel like the referrals that come from sources within the town, I'm assuming that they've been properly vetted and that they have been provided with a lot of other resources and oftentimes, I mean, Hester, you're a social worker, you're working with somebody for a while and developing a care plan, and that this is just part of that plan, and that to get extensively involved and sharing of phone numbers is perhaps not a sustainable approach, and perhaps also disruptive to the approaches that are being worked out with the existing staff. You all know I work very closely with a lot of different town programs. I'm connected to police, fire, health, COA, community services. I work with all of them. And I am hearing a little bit about that. Sometimes we can get overly involved and it could be a little bit disruptive. So I am concerned about this, that I don't think that the way we're doing things is necessarily always appropriate or always helpful. It could be disruptive, is what I've been hearing. And that's a concern. We really want to help. It's with the best of intentions, no doubt, that you're involved. I don't know if anybody else is willing to give up our own personal phone numbers for this, and to get requests at 11 o'clock at night. I personally would not. And so to continue this position as it is, I think is a challenge, honestly. I think that if there's cases where people are coming from new providers, you know, we assess for eligibility. Are they a Concord resident? Are they, have they received funds in the past? Is there, if they have, is there a limit? Have they reached their limit? We assess on those very basic guidelines and really share their, you know, their concerns with, pass them on to the appropriate resources that exists. That's kind of, you know, my take. There's also, I think, a real concern with confidentiality as we get involved. That puts perhaps, you know, that puts us at risk, you know, it's something to be taken really seriously. So I am concerned about the current, you know, level of involvement as the position is written, and sustainability. So anyway, my 2 cents, sorry.
So I
Um,
would say half maybe, I'll just look at this month's, but half of the applicants have already come to us in the past. So we know a lot about them. But I always want to update whatever it is. So if someone's lost a job or whatever. So when I present to the executive session, you'll know the circumstance of why this person is applying for help. So I talked to Bonnie, I talked to COA. I'm in close touch with them. I'm also in close touch with the Catholic Church, St. Vincent de Paul, because they take a lot of applicants who have much greater needs. I always direct them other places. So, but
if they've been already in touch with Bonnie or with Nicole or whoever's at the COA, presumably they've been directed in those cases, and that to do it again, or, you know, we don't always know the work that they're doing, and we shouldn't know the work that they're doing. We should just know a situation is coming to us because they've been referred on. Again, this is the half or more that are coming through them. They're doing all of that. And I would presume that if they've made the referral to Hugh Cargill, it has been because the circumstances have changed. It's a legitimate request. It's for them to assume that, you know, to assess all of that.
So, Jill, making sure I understand you, if you give me an example, you know, Mr. Smith calls up and he's been referred by, you know, somebody else, and maybe he's a repeat applicant to us.
Yes.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is then all we would do is say, you know, Mr. Smith, is there anything particular we should know, you know, about this? And you are a Concord resident and your request is for X amount of money for Y purpose, period.
And we have already given you X amount this year, you've exceeded your request, or we can give up to an amount, you know, to cap it at our limit. But the presumption is that they have done all of that other screening to tell us that this is a man who, you know, is in need, and perhaps you're able to help them. We have already done that vetting.
And so
Can I,
we won't find
sorry.
out anything about Mr. Smith or his family's life.
I'm not even sure if they've already done that, why we would.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I just want to be sure I understood.
Yeah, it's not our purpose. That's not our place to dig deep into their lives.
Yeah.
Perhaps exposing their confidentiality, you know, and you know, there's a lot of pride in this town. You know, a lot of people, it's very hard for them to reach out and ask, and to the more people that are exposed to the details of their lives, the less comfortable I am, you know, for them. I don't think it's that respectful sometimes. So it's a concern. Elizabeth, you were going to ask me something.
Well, I actually want to take a big step back, because when I joined the committee, I just kind of learned and did what had been done in the past. But I just wonder, why are we doing any evaluation of the merit of a request? So if they've come in through the COA or Bonnie, we can simply make a phone call back to the COA and Bonnie and say, hey, we heard from so-and-so.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, we sent them to you. They could use the help, period. And then we just approve the request without, I mean,
we do
think-
put people down.
sorry?
We do turn people down.
Yeah, and then if it's someone who we've never, who was not referred from another organization in town, we haven't heard from, then we figure out who is the person or committee or organization that would vet them, let them do that, and then circle back to us so I've always been uncomfortable with asking any question to our applicants. And I don't know. I'm wondering if if we could actually go all the way back to that point. By the time they come to us, they've already been vetted by someone else, and someone else is in charge of their program. We're simply a supporting group. And if they've never come to us, then we need to set them up with that. And we aren't the point person. It just doesn't feel like we should ever be the point person.
So
We should not, especially because there's a rotation of membership in this group. There's not the continuity that a staff person can provide, and having that longer term relationship and bigger picture. The other troubling thing I've heard is that there have been instances where requests have not come to us because people don't want to get involved. They don't want to get further exposed. So there's possibly unmet need. People are really, afraid to get further exposure through us. And, this is all said to me in confidence, and I'm not, and that's just really an important part of this whole committee's work. So I hate to think that the perception is that, we're too involved, and that it's a deterrent. That's not, we should be giving away as much money as we get in, right? It's not for us to hold on to. Absolutely, we should not give it all away if it's not appropriate or eligible. But if it is, and people are afraid of coming to us because of exposure, that's not good. We're volunteers. We shouldn't be set up to do deep dives into people's personal business like this.
If it changes and we are no longer, if we think it makes sense that we would do a better job serving our community by not being the vetting, having that role, does it change the way people ask? Do they still come to us directly, or do they come through whoever the vetting group is? Because
interesting.
right now it's a confidential email, it's a confidential phone number. We're later today, we're going to talk about whether to have a cell phone specifically for our intake person, and perhaps the way that the help is requested changes too.
So I will just say, the reason I've been doing what I've been doing is Susan Eckel did it before me. So this is how she did it. And she asked me, she said, would you please join Hugh Cargill Trust and take my job and do intake? And that's really how I got started. She was a teacher in Concord, and I knew her that way, not socially, but I, had interactions with her at Alcott School and everything. And she sort of showed me what she did. And so I've been doing it that way. A lot of these people have come over a long period of time. And, I always ask Bonnie or COA what they think. And they don't know the finer parts of how we do allocate our funds. But anyway.
But I don't know if it's necessary for them to know that. I don't think that, again, if, they have sent somebody to us, then I'm trusting that they know as much as they need, and that they've made that assessment that we're an appropriate resource for a client. And I don't know who I would ask to take on this role. I'm not stepping up. If I was to be asked to do what you're doing, Lucy, I would resign from this committee. And I don't, honestly, it's not appropriate. It's not my skill set. I don't want to know. I want to know that there's levels of need in this community. I think it's really important and informs a lot of my work. I don't need to know everybody's story. I just need a big picture overview. And the assumption that somebody has been approved and vetted through a previous, through an appropriate and skilled. I'm not saying you're not skilled, Lucy. I'm saying that, you know, these are people who have gone to school for those reasons, you know, to do that assessment and come up with a plan. And that's not who, you know, that's not the skills that you recruit for on this committee. So yes, it might have been your predecessor that did it that way. I don't see it as sustainable.
And actually, I want to say out loud, I appreciate the resistance that there's been to step up for this position, because it's given us the opportunity to make it better. I agree, it's too much work. In some cases, duplicative work. And the information that we're collecting, I don't want to know. So I feel like we have actually a great opportunity to change the way it used to be done before Lucy and the way it'll be done after Lucy.
And Lucy, I just really want to make sure you understand, I think you do it with the best of intentions, and it's like,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful, and, but not sustainable. I keep going back to that. Nobody else is going to step up. I shouldn't say nobody I know is going to step up and do what you're doing. And it's all really sweet and with the best of intentions, but not appropriate, I think.
Well,
You know,
one thing, you know, when we go to executive session today and we go through the applicants, I will give you minimal information on which to make a decision. And we'll try that. I've tried to not say everything about everyone at all, but I do have a sense of where there's real need and where there isn't. You know, some people just, they inch up to December and they say, oh my goodness, maybe I can make one more ask before the year is out.
and I
So
think when you
I
give us,
think that was sorry, Jill.
no, I would say that when you give us that information, that's useful. It would be helpful to know what the referral source was, as we, you know, look at how many are coming through. That'll be helpful to know.
Yeah, I always say that where it came from.
Okay.
So again, I'm just trying to clarify what I think I'm hearing. Are we wondering whether it would no longer be permissible for Mr. Smith to just call us directly if we've never heard of Mr. Smith before, that everybody would have to be referred through, we'd have to have a list of places?
I don't think that's what I was suggesting, no.
Okay.
And I
I
wasn't
think-
either. I think
yeah.
that there will be people that find us and that it might be their first foray into getting assistance. So again, looking at some basic eligibility and then referring them on to where we think is appropriate.
Right.
Okay, so then if we use this mythological Mr. Smith, you know, as our example, I mean, this is my skill set, and I think this probably was why I was recruited to the committee. But having listened to what Lucy does, there's no way in the world that I can take that or am able to take that on either. And you know, sort of I have my professional opinion for myself in thinking about this job. And Lucy, I'm not talking about how you do it, but if I were to do it, is I couldn't possibly do what you do. I could do either a pretty much name, rank, and serial number, you know, kind of question, or I could do a complete clinical evaluation, which would take an hour, you know, with anybody, and neither of those is appropriate. You know, so we have to have a standard which sort of anybody who's thoughtful and smart and careful can do.
Hester, do you have a sense of what the middle ground is on that?
That we would have, and I'd have to trust Lucy to be able to supply us with a list of maybe half a dozen questions that we would need to know the answers to. And Lucy, you probably know what they would be, most importantly.
Well, I sent you
One of them would certainly need to be something like, is there something else important that you haven't told us or we should know about? You know, something vague.
well, that's what they usually start out with. My husband lost his job, or, you know, they immediately say something that, so that I am captured.
But so if that's, you know, Mrs. Smith's, you know, introduction, you know, when she calls, would it be possible to then say, you know, that must be tough, or I'm sorry to hear that, too many of that, and then nothing else, just proceed to whatever our set of 3 or 4 questions is? I mean, not to engage in the conversation. I don't know if that's
I would
possible.
think the very first question is, who were you referred by, which organization? And if it's none, I'm going to help you connect with the right organization, in town. And then, once that occurs, the rest of the application goes forward, because now we have a town, a person or organization that we reach out to say, I've received this request, you know, and you have now vetted that person. I mean, I wonder, instead, it doesn't seem like it makes sense to go through all the details today, because I wonder if it makes sense for Lucy and Jill or Hester or both to kind of come up with a new draft for a proposed way to do this intake role. Does that seem like I mean, we can continue doing what we're doing until we've decided to do it differently. There isn't a deadline on this.
You know, I was looking at the intake form, which Lucy sent over as well.
Mhm.
And you know, there's some questions on there that I think are appropriate to take. And you know, looking at referred by, you want their contact information. You want to know about previous assistance, what's requested this time. And maybe tax relief, yes or no, because that will give you a sense of kind of where they fall on the income spectrum. I don't know, the rest of it seemed a little bit perhaps unnecessary. I don't know, but yes, I think we could take a stab at recreating something, refining something, but you know, even this form perhaps, you know, discloses too much information. Although, you know, I guess the intake person is the only person that's seeing it currently, but I don't know. There might be more here than we need.
At our last meeting, Jill, you had suggested having a guidelines that we
Mhm.
can just give to people so they can look at it and then go through the process following the guideline.
Yeah.
That might be the place to start, because then once they've followed that guideline, there might be some missing pieces of information. So the mortgage rent condo fee is not important, but the assessed value is.
Mhm.
Because that would drive them to a property tax relief application, for example.
Mhm. Right. Right. Yeah, employment status doesn't necessarily change anything. I mean, you know, if there's need, whether or not you're working, right? You know. Yeah, I'm happy to take,
Mhm.
you know, to work with you guys to further to refine this and simplify it, and you know, simplify the workload and the breach of, you know, the interference possibly, and breach of confidentiality issues. So, yeah, let's do
So
that.
can we leave it there for today? Lucy, what do you think? If we leave it there for today, and then you and Jill and potentially Hester as well drafts the some type of a guidelines and much more simplified.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can
yeah.
do that. I'm really busy for the next couple of weeks. If we could sort of make this a January, you know, something that we will come back with our good ideas. So Hester and Jill, you can sort of make your own little drafts of things, comments, and I'll do the same, and we can get together and put it into one document that satisfies us all. How about that?
Sure, and Hester and I can get started. I have time to get started on that with you for sooner than January.
I'll just remind you all during this process, two of you can speak to each other directly.
Oh, thank you.
Three of you cannot get together and review a document because that is gonna be considered deliberation. So, you know, if you need help putting things into one document and track changes, I can do that, so it would be easier to review at a meeting like this. But the three of you aren't gonna be able to get together offline and review changes together.
Okay. But Hester and I can start that process together then, and then we
Yeah.
can expand the circle.
Yeah, and so let's say you and Hester put together a document that you like together. Lucy can send me her suggestions to it, and then we can discuss it all at a meeting.
Good.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the reminder, Shannon.
Actually,
Yeah.
I would add, Shannon, I would add one step in there that either Jill or I, after we have produced something, would speak with Lucy, would be another twosome before she then submits whatever she's
As long
gonna
as it's a
submit.
twosome, you're good.
I'm sorry?
As long as it's a twosome, you're good to do that.
Yeah, right. No, I understand.
Okay. Great, thank you. So why don't I'll just put it on my draft agenda for January. And then we'll just see how it goes between now and then, with that first draft. Okay,
Yeah,
great, thank you.
Yep.
The Hugh Cargill Trust Committee calendar. Judy had passed it on to me when I became chair and she left the committee. Judy Terry, and I've just been keeping it up to date. So I changed it up a little bit for myself just because it was easier for me to look at the month and the things to do in that month. Didn't know whether people had looked through it, if there were things that were confusing, changes. I did move the annual appeal all the way up to September. That was a very recent change because we used to scramble at the very last minute, and I don't like scrambling, but then of course I missed my own September reminder, so.
well, that's a good idea, Elizabeth, because we're now all of us getting appeals from various units in Concord, and so we want to make sure that we're not the last dollar that's going out the door from donors.
Right. I mean, we could do it any time of year. It doesn't have to be around the new year, which is the way we've done it before. In fact, that usually is when everyone is receiving requests. So maybe we want to do it in the springtime instead of in the fall.
I actually think that's a good idea because the numbers of requests that come through all of our mail
Yeah.
are a lot.
Do we want to try that this year? Do it in, say, May?
Let's do it this year prior to Patriots Day, because you could then have some kind of good, strong opening statement about Concord 250. We've always taken care of our own, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, I love that.
That's
Just
great.
gonna say that.
Mhm.
I also, this is a unique year because of the 250th. But with town meeting being in June, I'm also the town meeting coordinator and processing all of the donations coming in May, I think would be really, really hard for me to do this year. But if you did it, earlier in the spring, I think it would be okay.
So if the letter went out in March with the mention of the Concord 250, wouldn't that still burden you in April and May with donations?
I suppose I always felt like when we did the appeal on its usual timeline, that traffic is heaviest closest to when the letter goes out. And it sort
okay.
of fizzles out, but I'm open to however you want to do it this year. If you want to stick with a December timeline or shift to the spring. Just issuing the letter in May makes me anxious.
Okay. Well, I would love for it to be March just because I think there's a lot of requests that come in our mailboxes this time of year, starting now, and I love Hester's idea to kind of mention the 250 and how we take care of ourselves, of each other.
Mhm.
I'm good with March.
Okay, that
Okay.
sounds reasonable.
All right, so I will change the calendar so that the annual appeal, the preparations, the first time we take a look at the letter actually would be January. February, we would have a final, send it to Concord for printing, and then it could go out March, or maybe it's a February approval of the letter, March mailing. Yeah, probably
Are
that.
we okay with our balance if we really don't have a new influx of funds for another 4 months?
I mean, I think we're fine, considering,
I think so.
yeah. Looking at the treasurer's report, I don't think that that would be, yeah. Good question, though. Okay. So,
Going back to the calendar, Elizabeth, one
Yeah.
question I have, you mentioned a couple of times, like the Silent Fund review with Bonnie Wilbur, Camperships review with Bonnie Wilbur. Who is that that's reviewing with Bonnie Wilbur?
so this was a change actually to our treasurer's duties. It used to be, actually, I don't know, I don't remember, but it's the treasurer that would be checking with Bonnie Wilbur on the schedule for Camperships, and making the request. Do you want me to do, actually, should I just put that in there?
Yes, yeah, for continuity, as this gets passed on to the next
We'll
generation.
remember, right?
Yeah. Because in other cases, you have, annual chair signs thank you letters, Silent Fund. It should be, I think, spelled out. And if there's any other of those tasks, I think whoever it is should be identified. Those stuck out to me.
Okay, so I'll add member role to the tasks. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, my goal was to try to create policies and procedures that can be just passed on to new members without, I mean, always there'll be sort of a person supporting and answering questions when someone joins the committee. But just in terms of what each role does, it'd be great to just have a binder of this is what we do, this is when we do it, so that it doesn't have to be passed on. Okay. Any others that really jump out at you as missing that type of information?
Request holiday funds. I guess a lot of it is the treasurer, like the Silent Fund request holiday funds from the trustees.
Mailing the property tax relief confirmation letters, that comes from Shannon from the,
Mhm,
so I'll add that.
mhm.
And under the every month, obviously, the chair posts the agendas, et cetera. Secretary sends approves minutes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Good
That's-
pickup, Jill. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. It's gonna make it
Thanks.
awesome. Yep.
Good.
Okay. I will create a new one and send it around.
And when, it's funny, when I saw calendar, I assumed it was really our meeting dates also, not what happens on a monthly basis. So I would love to see even added to this, perhaps, what, if it's every, the second Tuesday of the month, whatever, having the dates spelled out every time. So what we did with the Board of Health meetings is at every monthly meeting, part of our agenda was to review the upcoming meetings to make sure that a quorum existed for each of those. So we would, I would know, next month is December 10th. We could ask right now who knows they're not available, and we don't have to go through, the lengthy emails as we try to connect with each other. So seeing the calendar in advance would be very helpful, even though it's easy enough for me to say, oh, second Tuesday, I just put it in my calendar now. For all of us to review it together, I think is useful.
Yeah, I like that. So, and I think a long time ago, I may have had that in the agenda, looking forward to whatever's coming on the calendar next month. So I'll add that back to the template for the agenda, and also the check-in for attendance for the next meeting, which of course, I mean, things change, like Catherine had an emergency today, for example,
I
but
can't help that. Right.
just in
Yeah, no,
general,
of course, things
yeah,
come
we
up.
have a
but-
heads up of if we needed to reschedule a meeting
Mhm.
a month in advance. So that's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, I don't have on the calendar. It's not in the calendar, actually. This would be the chair's responsibility. I'll just verify that in there somewhere it explains how to get the agenda. How and when to create the agenda, to post it, to get it to the town, et cetera. Because sometimes there's a holiday and you just have to make sure to get it on time to be posted.
Right.
Um,
Right, and there's the legal, limit on how far in it, or what's too soon, right? So you can't
Is
make changes with a certain amount because of the public announcements. It has to be
Oh, I
done.
didn't know that. Okay.
Right, Shannon, am I right? Is that the case, that it has to be posted if there's a limit? You can't go too far. You can't change it within a certain couple of days.
Yeah, it depends on what the change is.
Okay.
But I think that's a good rule of thumb. Like if for some reason you guys decided that you wanted to make your meeting hybrid, you would be able to make that change because you're increasing accessibility to the meeting.
Mhm.
If you
Mm.
scheduled a hybrid meeting and then said, we want to just change to Zoom, you can't do that because you're taking away an option. But so that's a good rule.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda was the idea of having a committee cell phone for the intake person that's funded by our administrative expenses budget. I just think this is a great idea. It just creates that buffer of privacy for everybody.
I don't see an alternative really, other than someone with a generous heart that Lucy has.
Unless there's a town line that people call into that you have access to, and I don't know.
So a lot of people, I'd say more than half or 3/4, come through our line, our town line. And then I harvest them each day. I can tell who's called and what they want. And then they will type something out and say, I'm in need of such and such. Can we talk? And so that's the initial contact for most people.
Lucy, so you're able from home or from wherever to pick up the voicemail on the town line. Is that
Yes.
right?
Oh, yes.
And your choice, though, now, I guess, is you go downtown to the townhouse to call them back, or you use your own phone to call them back.
I never go to the townhouse unless, Shannon invites me to.
But
coffee.
that's a pain in the neck, obviously. I don't want to have to do that.
I don't think that is a pain in the neck. I think having a cell phone could potentially be more of a pain in the neck for me than scheduling a time for you guys to just come down and use a phone. Because also like, okay, when we talk about administrative costs for the committee, like the mailing, but if you guys are not even sure that you want all of the funds for the mailing to come from that, where's the cell phone funded from? And then that's also like a monthly invoice that someone has to pay for the cell phone. And it's just, frankly, it's just not very common that a lot of people in the town have town cell phones. So I think that with the Hugh Cargill email address and with the voicemail line, you would be able to get a lot of your requests, and then, someone could come and sit in my office for an hour a week, and that would not bother me at all.
But the thing is, calling people back. You can't sort of say, well, on Wednesdays at 2:00, this is when we can talk, because a lot of people work, they have different schedules. So, it's at my convenience, but it's really at their convenience too. It's not always easy for these people to call during the day.
Yeah, I don't know, it's something to discuss. If you guys were asking for a cell phone, that's something that I think would have to be approved by the town manager. So I'd be asking you guys to, write up a proposal to her. And it would be up to her. But I think that, you all were also having some good conversations about boundaries with the role, and you could set a weekly office hours or something that you're able to accept and make calls during a certain time. But it's all, I don't know that there's ever gonna be a perfect solution, but if we were making it this long without a cell phone, I don't know that.
But we've made it this long because Lucy's been willing to use her
I know,
phone.
but Lucy wasn't always in this position. Lucy has been in it for the last couple of years, but like, I don't know what people before Lucy were doing, if they were also dishing out their personal line.
They were.
So, Bob, when he was doing the property tax relief, did not use his own cell phone. Probably fewer calls than the intake person, for sure. And the reason we were proposing the cell phone was to improve the communication and the efficiency of the intake job while also protecting the privacy of the intake person. So, I would, Shannon, what you're saying pretty much has convinced me that the cell phone's actually not a good idea. So, good argument. I'm just wondering if maybe we put this aside as well until we have reformed, like we've redesigned the intake job as a whole, and then we can pick up the conversation of communications, maintaining privacy, etc. Because I think the boundaries goal is a really important one. So maybe it will be a little less easy, but it's I just feel like we're actually not ready to make this choice quite yet.
And if you guys do want to have a proposal to have a cell phone, of course, I will put that forth to Carrie. But it's just like there are then administrative things on the back end that have to get taken care of.
I'm hearing all these arguments and they all make perfect sense, but I mean, speaking very selfishly, it would, I cannot go down to the townhouse to return calls. And I also am listening to what Lucy said about how it's different. People's schedules are different, and I appreciate you do sometimes have to. I call my patients in the evenings. I mean, that's real. So I think you're going to eliminate more people, or some people, at least you're going to eliminate me from ever wanting to do this role. It's a requirement.
That's not good.
But,
I can't do
if
it.
we go to where we're assuming that so much of the vetting has happened with the appropriate agencies, then there's also fewer calls that are being made, right?
Good point.
So that I think, moves it a little bit in my mind towards not
Wait.
happening.
Okay, I hear you, and I'm glad you feel more flexible than I do. I'm just going to recognize.
Yeah, I just might have I live 5 minutes away.
That's not going to happen. Yeah.
Right. And I recognize it could be a barrier for, a lot of different people to not be able to call at night. On the other hand, not everybody in this position wants to make those calls or take those calls at night. Night is a different time, so. I think I think
the communication between the intake person and the applicants is all over Lucy's responsibilities description. It's things like how do the invoices get to whoever they need to get to, and I think this is why I'm thinking if we work on on updating the role, one category of that is going to be communication. And I think that's when we can better answer the question of whether the cell phone is the right method. There are folks who are going to bring their handwritten application to the townhouse. We want to be able to make the whole process as easy as possible for everybody. Okay. All right, I will put it on the January agenda. Um, okay, so consider returning to Zoom during the winter. I so prefer meeting in person, but I missed, don't know if I told you. I had COVID
Mhm.
and then recently I had pneumonia.
Ooh.
Oh,
I've just been, Zoom makes it possible to have the meetings.
Mhm.
I don't usually get sick in the winter and maybe, you know, I didn't knock on wood the last time I said that. I don't know. But I do like the idea of having Zoom, our meetings by Zoom during the colder months. Holidays through maybe February. But I prefer meeting in person. That's my opinion on the meetings.
I've only been to one in-person meeting and I agree with you that the airspace is different, you know, the quality of it is better, but boy, is Zoom easier for me all the time.
I think that one meeting is the only one any of us have had, except maybe Lucy, because you've been around a lot longer.
Well, we used to have it at the Board of Assessors building in their conference room, and it was absolutely wonderful. We were all there with our papers, and you know, for a couple of years, it was really terrific.
Mm,
Board of Assessors welcomed us each week, each month, and
it's a pretty building.
pretty building, and we had a place to park, and you know, it was very nice. But Zoom is convenient. I know Catherine hadn't met anybody for the longest time. She only knew me. She'd never seen anyone else in person, so.
Right.
Jill, do you have a preference?
You know, I like both. I mean, in the summer, I'm often not around, but I'm available. So, although it said Zoom only in the summer. No, I think hybrid gets around that, you know, but I know that if you have two people in the room and three elsewhere, it's not, I don't think there's no benefit in that. I don't like that. It's better for the public, but most of our meeting is not really viewed by the public. So no, I'm okay with Zoom, even though I prefer seeing people in person and getting to know how tall you really are and things like that. You know, it's always amazing when you see somebody in person and, you know, it's like, wow, you're 6'5". I had no idea. You know?
Mm.
So I think it makes sense.
That happened with Bob when I met him in person. I thought he was this very tall man and he's not, and it was a surprise.
Oh yeah, no, I'm speaking from experience, you know, with one
Yeah.
of our Board of Health members, you
Yeah.
know, really tall. No idea.
Well, how about we do December by Zoom, and then why don't I just put on the agenda that we make a decision month by month of whether we're going to do in person or Zoom? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
that's good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then the last thing is the property tax relief. So we did receive one application for property tax relief, and I'll have more information during our executive session. So, if somebody would,
Elizabeth,
yes, Wendy?
before you go into public, take a vote to go into executive session. I just want to make a public comment and pass
Sure.
on some information. So you know that I'm a participant in the trustees of town donations, and in your September meeting, there was a request to have someone from this trust participate at a trustees meeting. For two reasons. One is to let you know that there are funds available that you want to be aware of. The trustees just voted in their allocatable funds. And I won't share it with you because that should come from the trust, but it's a fair amount of money. And in your calendar, that process happens around September. So if you're curious to know what funds would be available, you should be able to get that information around September. But the second item I wanted to share is that the next upcoming meeting of the trustees is December 5th. And they would love to have somebody attend that meeting to talk a little bit about the trust, and then they can share this allocation process. And they're also rolling out intending to send letters to the larger funds requesting that they come to one of the trustees' meetings on an annual basis, and then just share an overview of how the funds are being used and the number of beneficiaries.
So I can add to that.
Thanks, Shannon. I know Colleen was going to talk to you.
Reinhardt, who is the deputy treasurer collector, she's been working with the trustees and she flagged this for me. And I had reached out to Catherine independently as the treasurer to see if she would want to attend, and talk about, the silent fund request, that is gonna go in front of the trustees, and she said yes. So
good.
I think she is able to do that.
So she can represent the silent fund as well as the Hugh Cargill funds.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, on December 5th at 5.
Yep.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you. I called Colleen earlier, but she didn't tell me that she was in touch with you, so. Great.
thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep, I had also chatted with Catherine about being the person that goes to that meeting, so I'm glad that she can make the 5th. Great,
Thank you.
excellent.
Great. That's it.
Thanks, Wendy. Okay, if I could have the adjournment.
Move be adjourned, but I don't know all the language that Catherine always.
It's at the bottom of the agenda, in case you have it in front of you. I
I
don't,
don't?
think-
What
I
do you
don't
mean?
think the chair is allowed to do it, otherwise I would just read what I'm looking at.
I can
Does
do
anybody else have the agenda up? I don't have it up anymore.
it. I can do it.
Thank you, Lucy.
I move that we adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing individuals or families seeking assistance, the disclosure of which would be a violation of privacy.
Good job. Excellent. Second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye.